Do you have a peach tree in need of pruning but don't know even where to start? Well, grab a pair of pruning shears and come along with me, because today we'll be pruning a peach tree in my own backyard orchard. Come along. All right, so here we are, ready to prune our peach tree. One of the first things that we want to talk about is the supplies that we need in order to do our pruning job. We have a good pair of pruning shears, as well as a pair of loppers. These loppers will telescope out on the handles, making it a lot easier to reach up higher into the tree if you do have a tree that is a little taller, or if you have some branches way up high that do need to be removed. One other thing that I don't have here, but is a good idea, is a bottle of rubbing alcohol. This will be used to clean your pruning shears prior to moving on to another tree. So after you've completed pruning on one tree, it is a good idea to wipe down your pruning shears. That will help to eliminate any spread of disease or any fungus from tree to tree. Okay, another aspect that we want to look at to begin with is, when is the best time for pruning? And what you want to think about is the time of year that you are pruning. The best time that most people recommend would be in the winter time or the very early spring, when the tree is dormant and the new growth has not yet started. The buds have not opened or formed yet. Another thing to think about is, what is the weather forecast to be like? You want to check out the weather forecast ahead of time and try to find a space of a few days where it is not forecast to be rainy. That way, after pruning the trees, you have a little bit of time for that tree to seal over and to heal its wounds before the rain comes. The thing that we're looking at there is, with too much rain on freshly cut trees, it can cause some diseases and some fungus to start as well. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is different pruning methods that can be done for pruning fruit trees. There are two main pruning methods, and the first one is called a central leader. And the central leader is used more for like your apples and your pear trees. This is when you have a main branch that comes up through the tree, and then there's scaffolding branches that come off of that. Think of it a lot like a pine tree. The second pruning method that is common is for an open center pruning, and this is what is often used for stone fruit. So any fruit such as peaches, nectarines, plums, cherries are often pruned in a open center. An open center is often in the form of, like, in the shape of a bowl or a vase. What this does is it keeps that center of the tree open, so that way the sun can get in better and there's more air circulation throughout that tree to help with that fruit production and to keep the fruit healthy. Okay, let's look at this peach tree that we will be pruning today. If you look at this tree, I believe it is about a 5 or 6 year old tree, and you will see that it is pruned to the open center. See how all of this open is pretty much, the center is all pretty much open there. What you will note on this tree is that it has 3 main scaffolding branches coming up out of the trunk of the tree. Now, when you have a young peach tree, this is how you want to start shaping and pruning the tree and picking those scaffolding branches. Now, you'll note with this tree, the scaffolding branches do not all come from the same area of the tree. You do want a little bit of variation. Now, this one is fairly close, but you do want a variation in the height of your branches coming off, and that will make it a stronger tree. You also want to make sure that your branches are not too straight up and down, because that will cause weakness in the joints here. And when the tree is loaded with fruit, then the joints will be weak. And then there is more possibility of the tree cracking and breaking. Okay, you'll also note that the branches aren't way up high and they're not way down low. You want them at a decent height where they're not too low that they're going to be hit by the mower, but also they're not too high that then the tree gets too tall and the fruit is hard to pick. When you begin to start your pruning project, one of the things that you want to do first is just take a step back from the tree, look at the shape the tree is already in, and what needs to be improved. The first cuts that I'm going to make, I am looking for any dead branches that need to be trimmed off, and those will be the first cuts that I make. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll go from there. Now, one thing that is important is that your tools are sharp. It makes a much cleaner cut so that there's less chance of damage to the tree, and there's less chance, with less damage, there's less chance that diseases will get into that tree. So continuing around here, and let me bring you in a little bit closer here to check out one thing. Okay, so when you are looking for the dead branches, sometimes they're a little hard to spot. Sometimes you don't know if it's just that the branch is dormant or that there is actually no life left in it. So one of the easy ways to tell is to just kind of take a branch. So we have this branch here, and by the looks, it looks pretty dead. But just to test it, I would just kind of bend it. Now, if it is a branch that does have life in it, you will be able to bend it. You'll be able to, it'll be a little bit supple. If it is a dead branch, then it's not going to bend very well, and you're pretty much just going to hear some cracking, and it probably will snap on you. But that's a good rule of thumb to check out for those dead branches. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is looking for any damaged branches, any diseases on any of the branches, and remove that from the tree. Now, this tree really doesn't have a whole lot of new growth on it, so it's not taking a whole lot of pruning this year. But let's go ahead and look for those damaged branches now. You'll notice one right here that is busted over, just a little tiny thing. But we're going to remove that and get that out of the way, so that way there is no danger of issues later on. Okay, the damaged branches are all removed now. Another thing that you want to look for is any branches that cross over each other or are so close to each other that when they have the weight of the fruit on them, that they could rub against each other and cause any kind of damage to the tree. You want to try to keep all that damage to a minimum on the tree, because any spot where the bark is rubbed off, that opens the tree right up for any disease or any pests to come in and cause other problems with the tree's health. So we look also for branches that cross over each other. So we'll go ahead and take a quick peek at that. So I'm going to step back from the tree and look for any crossovers. It's okay for you to take your time as you're doing this, especially when you are new, which I don't consider myself any expert at all. But these are just tips and tricks that I have learned along the way. But take your time. Look at the tree. Pruning is an art. It's not something you're going to master in a year. It's not something you probably master in several years, unless perhaps you work at a fruit orchard and do it all the time. But if you're looking at just your own backyard trees, it'll take a while. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be worried about making a mistake. The trees are very forgiving, and usually it takes a very lot of cutting away in order to kill a tree. So I don't think that in most cases you'll be able to kill a tree from pruning it the wrong way. But just have fun with it. Do some studies. Look at different people's ideas of pruning and find what works best for you. Now that we've got all the damaged and diseased, all of what I call the problem branches out of the way, now let's look towards the center of our tree. Remember again that we are pruning to an open center, so we want to keep that center free and open. That again is to let that sunshine and the airflow come through. So we are now going to look at the opening and look for any branches that are growing out of that open area, or that are pointing in towards that open area that will kind of plug up that sunshine outlet there. So let's go ahead and look for all the open center branches to cut out. Sometimes you'll see things growing up from the center of the tree and you'll want to remove those. But this tree has a little bit of stuff. These are some little guys here that are starting to grow into the center. I'm going to bring you around here and I'm going to show you. This is the inside. Right here is the, yeah, I'll just show you best. Okay, so this is the inside of our branch here. So these branches, they're kind of on the center, but not completely. But I'm going to remove these because they are more towards the center. This one is a little more towards the center. So definitely something like this would be removed. So those are the things that we are looking for right now with our pruning. Okay, another thing that we are going to look for is just any branch that is growing straight up. If it's growing straight up off of the limb, what's going to happen is it's going to grow tall and it's going to block that sunlight from coming into any of the other fruit of the tree. So we're going to look for anything that is going straight up in the air, and we're going to eliminate those. So here's an example of an upright branch that's on another tree. These are what need to be removed out of the tree. This was an example of something I had talked about with the other peach tree. And so these would give you an idea of what you're looking at. There's one there. There's also a couple up here. So honestly, this little tree doesn't have that much work that needs done to it. So unfortunately, it's kind of not the best example for being able to prune. But there are still some work to doing it. There are still some things to show you and to explain. So, all right. So our next thing that we're looking at, once we've removed the branches that go straight up, we also want to look, is there any branches that are angling down to the ground? Are they growing downward towards the ground, or any branches that are underneath a main branch and they're growing from the underside of the branch? They will not get sunlight from there and they will be too shaded. The fruit will not be able to develop well. So those branches we will remove as well. You could say, well, hey, so what? I'm going to let it grow and there will be an extra piece of fruit there. Well, you could think of it that way, but another thought is, if you remove the fruit that's not going to do well, remove the branches that are not doing well, then that gives the tree more energy to put into the other fruit that is positioned in a good spot. So that way it can do its best. So that's kind of how I look at it, and that's the best way that I think to look at it, but everybody has their own opinions. All right, so I'm going to look for those downward facing branches, and I'm going to look for those branches that are hiding underneath So we've got all those downward branches gone. And the last thing to finish up would be to just look at the base of your tree and around the root system. Sometimes there will be some suckers that come up from the root base of a tree. And so that's what we're looking at for here, and we want to get those removed off of the tree if there is any. There is not any on this tree, but let me take you over and show you another tree where there is some, just so you can kind of see. Okay, so we came over to a small apple tree that I have planted over here, and I will show you an example of a sucker. So you'll notice that this is the root base here, but there is a small little branch coming off of there trying to take root. You want to remove these because a lot of time the rootstock of a tree is not the same kind as what your tree is that you got planted there. They use different varieties of rootstock. So you want to remove these because not only are they probably a different kind, but they also could be sapping a lot of the energy away from the tree itself that you want to be getting into that tree and helping it to grow and produce the fruit that you're looking for. So now it's time to step back, take a look at your tree, look at the finished product and see if that's what you're happy with. See if there's any more pruning that needs to take place, anything that's growing too much on one side or too tall, and trim those back. Congratulations, you have successfully pruned your tree. Okay, we're going to talk about just a couple things here to finish up after our pruning is complete. One thing that we want to make sure we do is to clean up all of the branches and all of the limbs that we might have pruned out of our trees, and we don't want them just laying on the ground. This could open up the tree to more disease and more issues. So make sure to collect all of those branches and limbs and get them disposed of. This is now also the perfect time, if you are pruning more than one tree right now, that you go ahead and get those pruners and get that rubbing alcohol and make sure to clean the tools with that rubbing alcohol. This will help to get rid of any disease or fungus that could be passed on to the next tree that you prune. So go ahead and wipe down your shears, wipe down your loppers, make sure you do both sides really well, get that all nice and clean, let them air dry before you start pruning the next tree. Alright, thanks for watching this video. If you have gotten any value from this video, please hit the like button and the subscribe button so that you will be notified of any future videos that I put out. Now go grab some pruning shears and get those trees pruned.